So I'll speak today on how the Lord's plan works in our life in mysterious ways. So I'll speak based on the Ramayan and so we will discuss today on the broad topic of the Lord's plan and how it works in our life. Some of you may need to come here because I'll be writing quite a bit. You may not be able to see it from there. So those chairs can be moved here if you like. Unless of course you like not seeing it. That's also fine. Some people, it's a bit non-conventional. Some people prefer to just hear. Whatever. So, now, one of the... Okay, you want to do something? No. One of the often frustrating things in life is that we make plans, and our plans, we think there's a straight path ahead for the plans, but instead what we get is a giant block, like a blockage, and there seems to be no way ahead. And it is such times we may not only get frustrated emotionally, but we may also lose our faith from a devotional perspective. Now, the Gita explains that Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. And interestingly it says that if we understand that he is the well-wisher of everyone, then Gyatva mam shanti mrichyati. That by understanding this, we will become peaceful. So, in general, it's natural that, say, if our plan is not working, we will get agitated. That's just a human emotion. We want things to work out in a particular way. And even if we are trying to say, do something for the service of the Lord. And also today we came by a car and the journey took much more time than what we got expected. We came from Brooklyn. So, all of you had to wait for some more time. Sorry about that. But, so it was disturbing. I'm not going to say that was the Lord's plan. That was our lack of planning. But it's natural that when things go wrong or things don't go the way we want them to, we get agitated. But through even such situations, Krishna's plan is still working. So I'll talk about this from the perspective of the life of Sugriva. And so many of us, we have our life planned in a particular way. Okay, maybe I'll get this degree, then I'll get this job, then I'll have my family, I'll do this, I'll do that. And it's important. At one level, planning is a sign of intelligence. It's only intelligent people can plan. Those who don't have intelligence, they just be short-sighted. Planning is not a sign of intelligence, it's also a sign of seriousness. If we are serious about something, we plan about it. So planning itself is a good thing. There is some American comedian who devoted sometimes quote that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Now, that's some truth to it. But it is not that God laughs at our plans. If we are wanting to do something serious and we make plans about it, Krishna is pleased by that. But what it means is make God laugh. It is that if we think that we will be able to bend the world to our will and make everything happen according to our plan, then there is going to be a problem. One of my devotee friends, a fellow preacher, he recently approached a spiritual master for blessings. He was starting a new project. And Maharaj told him, there is no doubt that you will be successful, and there is no doubt that your plans will be unsuccessful. So, life often works in unpredictable ways. So, planning itself is not a problem. So, we have, say if I am here, each of us has a path planned for our life, to some degree at least. So, now if we consider Sugriva, he also had a path planned for his life. He was the younger brother. In general, in the past, there was this system of primogeniture. Primogeniture means the first child becomes the king. So there is what is called as the heir, and then there is the spare. So the idea is that if something goes wrong with the heir, then use the spare. So there is most of the world has more or less abolished the idea of royalty, but the British still have it. So one of the British princes who was a spare, he wrote a whole book called Spare, and it's his autobiography. It's just, he is more or less complaining about how difficult life was. And he was living in palaces, but he was never going to be the king. So anyway, so everybody can find something to complain about in life. So Sugriva was the spare, but he never had any jealousy towards his brother. His brother was clearly stronger than him, and he thought his brother was wiser than him, and he was happy to assist his brother. And the two of them were a very powerful duo. In teenagers' language, you call them the awesome twosome. They were like that, and they protected their kingdom very well. But unfortunately, a terrible misunderstanding happened between them. Now I won't go into the specifics of the misunderstanding, because the part of the story I'm going to talk about is much later. But basically, Wali thought that Sugriva had conspired to try to take the kingdom away from him. That Wali had thought that Sugriva tried to trap him inside a cave where he had gone to hunt or to kill a demon who had been terrorizing their kingdom. And Sugriva had no such intention. So it's just a misunderstanding. But that misunderstanding went downwards. So when Wali was strong, but he also had a very strong temper. So he was so angry that he wanted to beat Sugriva, and Sugriva realized he's very angry, I can't reason with him. So he went away from there. He ran away from there, and Wali thought, why would he run away if he had not been guilty? Sugriva was thinking that, okay, he's angry, he will cool down. But generally we said anger, with the passage of time, it becomes cool. Isn't it? People are angry. Nobody can stay angry for a very long time. So people become cool. That is true, but that is not the only trajectory. See, when people become cool, then they become reasonably peaceful. Reasonably peaceful means they are ready to listen to reason. But anger, with the passage of time, need not always become cool. It can also become cold. And when it becomes cold, then the person becomes hatefully peaceful. It is not hatefully peaceful means, see, anger is a very expensive emotion for the body. Anger makes us very restless. We just have too much energy. Nobody can stay angry for a long time. But when the anger becomes cold, then the person becomes filled with hate. Anger is impulsive. Anger is hot-headed. Hate can be calculative. Hate can be cold-blooded. So Wali's anger, which direction did it go, you think? Yes, he became hatefully peaceful. So he decided that Sugriva tried to kill me once, he will try that again. And therefore the only solution is, I have to kill him. Now, Wali was the brother for whom he had lived. He was not just his brother, he was his best friend, he was his hero. And that very person was out to kill him constantly. That itself was very painful. And Sugriva had to flee from one place to another, to another, to another. And he practically went all over the world trying to find out where he could hide. He had to find both hideouts and escape ways. Because no matter where he would hide, Wali was relentless. Wali would find that place. And he would find that place, then he had to escape from there. And he thought that I have to keep searching like this. I have to keep fleeing like this, be a fugitive all the time. And when he had actually not done any wrong also. It is very easy at such times to become very resentful. But simply for the sake of survival, he had to become very, very adept at finding out, from this mountain, which is the way out, across this river, where can you cross, from where you cannot cross. He basically became an excellent geography student. Now, after that, he found that the only place he was safe was right next to his kingdom only. Once Wali had become very angry, he had killed a demon and he flung the demon's body far away. Now, forcefully. So that demon's body had fallen in the precincts of a sage who was performing a sacrifice. And the Wali could just kill the demon, but he just wanted to boast about his prowess and let everyone see how powerful I am. The sage said that you have desecrated my sacrifice, therefore I curse you that you will never be able to come here. If you come in this area, you will die. That is the Pampa Sarovar area. So now Sugriva could have become even more frustrated. First, I have to run for my life because of a crime I have not committed. Then I have to run all over the world, find ways here, there, everywhere. And I find no place to hide. And then finally I find a place right next to my kingdom only. So why do I have to run all over the place? It's like we are staying in a particular home. And then say because of some reason you have to leave that home. Maybe that owner says you have to leave. And then we search all over the city trying to find some place to live. We don't seem to find any place. And then we come to know at the house right next to our house, the neighbor's house is empty. Why did I come to know about it before? It's very easy to become frustrated. But somehow, Sugriva stayed over there till he finally met Ram. And by the arrangement of Lord Ram, Wali was punished. And then Sugriva got the kingdom. Now after Sugriva got the kingdom, then the agreement was that Sugriva will help Ram find Sita. So out of the 4 months of Chaturmasya, Sugriva just forgot initially because of various reasons, but mainly that he had been out suffering in poverty for so long and it suddenly got so much enjoyment. Like somebody has been fasting, barely getting very little food to even survive, and then suddenly that person comes home or gets to a place where there is a fully stocked fridge and there is absolutely nothing to do. Absolutely no work to do. It is raining, so it's like you've been hungry for a long time, you finally come back home and there outside there is a lockdown and there is an unlocked fridge. There's like a person who go on binge eating, so he just forgot everything. He was jolted out of his stupor by Hanuman, by Tara's, Wali's wife, and then by Lakshman, and he immediately came to his senses. And that's when he said that actually I have already called monkeys from Vanaras from various parts of the world, And then, see, at that time the Vanaras are sometimes equated with monkeys. Well, it is true, but it's not that simple. They are considered to be celestial apes. They are considered to be, in many ways, the Vanaras were more powerful than humans. So there is, in the Puranas, a categorization of various species given. So now we know how many human species are there?
400,000.
Okay, how many? 400,000 or 40,000? 400,000, okay. So what is this 400,000 human species? Actually, they may say there is only one Homo sapiens, isn't it? So what this human species actually, in this particular categorization, the Devatas also fall in the human species only. Because human species basically, though that species which has the capacity to perceive spirituality, to perceive the ultimate reality, to worship the Lord. So even the Asuras form in the human species. The Asuras don't, the other species are like aquatics and birds and others. So they don't fall in that. So basically they have human-like consciousness in the sense that they have the potential for spirituality. The potential for questioning what is the meaning of life ultimately. So any species that has that. Now whether that species pursues that meaning or not, that is a different question. But if they have that potential, they are called in the Vedic scripture the human species. So the Vanaras, technically speaking, they are in the hierarchy above the humans. So not all the Vanaras, in that particular, the monkeys who were being ruled by Sugriva, there were some who were Devatas descended to the earth. They were extremely powerful. There are other monkeys who were also ordinary monkeys over there in their army. But anyway, these were very powerful. So when he called the monkeys from all over the various places, see, the monkeys were also like a distributed race. They lived in forests and all over the world. But they had one king. And normally the king would not call them. They would live in their own particular places. But in this particular case, it was vital. He called them from various places. And then they came, and then he very competently. See, what happens is if somebody, when we are working with somebody, then initially everybody has to have some confidence building measures. That, when we tell somebody to do something, do they even understand what we are telling them to do? Do they do it or not? They do it, then our confidence in them increases. They don't do it, the confidence decreases. So now in the case of Sugriva, you could say there was a strike against him first. And he forgot his promise itself. He got lost. So now he had to do some damage minimization. So when he called all these monkeys, and then in Ram's presence he started guiding them. Told them, you go in the south, you go in the north, you go in the east, you go in the west. And while he was telling all of them in this way, he was guiding them very expertly. When you come to this mountain, you don't try to process from this side. It's very complicated. You go from this side. Here you will find a cave. You can use that cave to go across. Here there is a river. At this point this river is thin. At that point the river is very broad. So now when he was guiding all of this, Lakshman and Ram were hearing. And then after he finished the guidance, he said all of them. Ram said, hey, you like geography, it seems. He literally say that. But he says, I didn't learn out of interest, I learned out of necessity. So whatever. But the point here is that when he was learning about the various paths and the obstacles on those paths, he had no idea that he would be using that in the service of the Lord afterwards. But through the adversity that he was facing, and while facing the adversity, the skill that he was learning, that was preparing him eventually for the service of the Lord. So sometimes what happens is, we make a very radical differentiation. Say for example, if this is our life journey, this is the time when we start practicing Bhakti. Or we can say start practicing Krishna consciousness. So then we think that what happened before this was all material, and what happens after this is all spiritual. Well, it is not that simple. Now, it is not that before we started practicing Bhakti, Krishna was not there in our life. Krishna was still there in our life. And Krishna was still acting in our life. And even now, say right now when we are practicing our life, we may say, okay, this part of my life is spiritual, this part of my life is material. Well, yes, sometimes it's helpful to classify like that. Because you say, okay, in my home there is a temple, my family members are devotees, so everything that I do is bhakti. If my home is a temple, why do I need to go to a temple at all? If all my family members are devotees, why do I need to go and associate with other devotees? Well, why? Because although it may all be spiritual, but do we see it as spiritual? In our home, in a temple, when we go, our primary purpose is, oh, this is a temple. I am going here to worship Krishna. In our home, we are doing so many other things apart from worshipping Krishna. With our family, we have relationships that have so many other aspects. Generally, with devotees, our relationship centered on Krishna. So, the point is not that our home is material and temple is spiritual. The point is, what is the effect of what on our consciousness? When we go to a temple, it's much more likely that we will remember Krishna. In our home, how much is the likelihood? It's good if we can remember, but the likelihood is much more. So we all need association. So the point is that we can't simply equate the material and the spiritual, but at the same time we don't have to radically separate the material and the spiritual. Krishna is always acting in our lives, no matter what we are doing. So right now we may feel, oh, in my past this happened and that happened, especially when we do Western outreach nowadays. Many people come from very disturbed childhood or disturbed upbringing. It is there everywhere now. It's in India also doing there. It is there. But the point is, oh, this happened and I was scarred because of that, and I'm wounded because of that, and I have this conditioning because of that. Yes, it may all be true. But we shouldn't think that Krishna was not there or that Krishna was not acting. Krishna is always acting in our lives. So even now we may say, okay, my spiritual life is going on well, but this is going wrong in my material life, that is going wrong, that is going wrong. Okay, yes, the two are separate, but two are also interconnected. Because Krishna is always acting in our life. So in general, pain is just a fact of life. Everybody will have pain in their life, sometime or the other. Now that's what Krishna says when he says this world is dukkhalaya. But Krishna does not mean to say that, okay, this world is dukkhalaya, so stay dukhi. Just stay miserable. That is not the point. See, when pain comes, there are two trajectories we may go in. See, pain can be transmitted or pain can be transformed. Pain is transmitted means what? That, my parents are short-tempered, so I become short-tempered. My parents solved all problems by yelling at each other, so I also keep yelling at everyone. So I was abused, so I abuse others. Now, unfortunately, this happens. So pain, when it is transmitted, what happens is, it creates a parampara of pain. A tradition of tribulation, a tradition of distress being passed down. That is unfortunate. But the great potential that we human beings have is that we don't have to go in this direction. Now pain can be transformed. And the transformation of pain, it primarily happens through finding some purpose. If you can find a purpose that helps us to go through that pain, then now that purpose may be found at that time, that purpose may be found later also. When Sugriva was going through that pain of being chased, The only purpose for him at that time was survival. But through it all, he was learning something valuable. So for all of us, when we go through pain, in the sense that when our plan doesn't seem to be working, in fact, when everything opposite to our plan seems to be happening, then it's naturally going to be painful. But through it all, Krishna's plan is always working. Maya Dhyakshen Prakriti. So Krishna says that I am in control of the world. So this last part I'll talk about in this session, about when we say Krishna's plan is always working. So what does it mean? I'll talk about 3 P's over here. So first is the plan. See, our plan may be going wrong, but Krishna's plan is far bigger. And because Krishna's plan is far bigger, Krishna's plan can keep working even through our mistakes and our misdeeds. So how does it work? So for example, say we are driving a car and say the GPS tells us turn left, and say we turn right. What happens? Does the GPS say you didn't obey me, get lost? No, the GPS doesn't do that, isn't it? The GPS reroutes and helps us find a way. So God's plan is basically God's positioning system. According to that GPS, we are always on route. Or rather, there is always a way ahead. We may sometimes go off track, but you can always reroute and be on the route. So we need, this is when we study scripture, almost every story is a story of things going wrong in people's lives. Parikshit Maharaj is living a virtuous kingdom, and suddenly, what happens? He's cursed. Cursed to just die. So throughout scripture we do see that bad things do happen even to good people. But then there is a bigger plan that is always working. So when we study Shastra, it is important that this, when we talk about ultimately Surudam Sarva Bhutanam, that Krishna's plan is working, this is our Shraddha. That Krishna's plan is never lost. This is what Bhishma says, that, oh Yudhishthir, the Lord's plan is very difficult to understand. But the Lord's plan is always working. So many times if we look back at our lives, we may be able to make sense of the Lord's plan. Hey, this was, when this happened, it seemed so terrible. But now I see it was for good. So here, I'll come back to this Lord's plan a little later. But the second part is basically part. That we all have a part in the Lord's plan. When we say the Lord's plan is happening, it is not just happening to us. When the Lord's plan is there, it has 2 aspects to it. It is happening to us and it is meant to be happening through us. So it is not just that whatever is happening is the Lord's plan. It is, we are also meant to do something. You may have heard this, people have the Gita Sar sometimes in their home. जो हुआ वो अच्छा हुआ, जो हो रहा है वो अच्छा हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है वो भी अच्छा ही होगा. Whatever happened was good, whatever is happening is good, whatever will happen will be good. Well, the problem is that I have read the Gita dozens of times, I have friends who have read many more times. We've never found any verse which comes anywhere close to this. The point is that the Gita is not so much about what is happening. Nowhere in the Gita says, Krishna says that, you are in this war where you have to kill your relatives, Arjuna. Jo ho raha hai, wo acha ho raha hai. It was, bad things do happen in the world. But the point is that good can come through bad. Bad things can happen in life. So when we say God's plan, it's not just automatic. We also have to play a part. The Gita's focus is not so much on what is happening as it is on what we are doing. The whole focus is for Krishna to persuade Arjuna to play his part. So how do we play our part? That is through service attitude, a seva bhav. We understand that we are always parts of Krishna. Mamayvamsho jiva loke. Now, if we understand that we are parts of Krishna, that is a philosophical truth. Practically, it means that we have parts in Krishna's plan. If somebody is a part of the Indian cricket team, then what does it mean? They have a part in the Indian cricket team. What is the part? If you are a bowler, you are a batsman, you are a fielder, whatever it is, you are a wicket-keeper or whatever, you have a part. So every one of us has a part. And our part is to serve. So what happens is, this is where we were talking earlier about planning. The problem is not in planning. Planning is important. But planning can be done in a mood of controlling, or planning can be done in the mood of serving. So in what mood am I planning? So am I planning so that Krishna, I am your servant, I want to serve you better. Then even if our plan doesn't work, our purpose is to serve. Krishna, my plan is not working, but I'll serve in whatever way I can. When we are planning in the mode of controlling, then it can make us un-Krishna conscious. But our serving mood can make us Krishna conscious also. So we have our part and we never lose our part. We never ever lose our part in Krishna's plan. So Krishna has a plan and we have a part in Krishna's plan. But in that makes us okay. How do I make sense of my part? But there seems to be nothing I can do at this present. And that's where we will talk about the last part, that is perspective. So to understand Krishna's plan, there is Shraddha. Then this is Seva, that we are parts of Krishna. We are meant to serve Krishna. And then perspective is more about Chakshu or Drushti. Krishna talks about Jnana Chakshu, Prema Chakshu. Those words are used. So what exactly is this perspective? What is the perspective that can help us to see? Okay, that even in this situation, there is some plan for my life. There is something for me to still do. This is where three things we'll talk about over here. Let me go down over here. Or let me first write over here. Basically, this perspective, it expands our understanding of the length, the breadth, and the depth. Let me explain what I mean by length, breadth, and depth. That length means that we often tend to look at things from a short-term perspective. Now, right now, this is terrible. This is good. This is bad. But what may be good or bad right now may be very different from how it may be eventually. So if we have a long-term perspective, then our vision of good and bad can change dramatically. A child may feel, oh, playing is so wonderful, studying is so boring. But studying can lead to a bright career in the future. So the Gita tells us this especially by telling us that we don't just have this one life. Life is not like a sprint. We are running. Everybody in a rat race. The problem with the rat race is that even if you win the rat race, you still remain a rat. Isn't it? And whoever gets to the destination, it's just ultimately everybody has to die. There's an Italian proverb which says that at the end of the game of chess, the king and the pawn go into the same box. So it's like that. We are going in this rat race. We have a short-term view of life. Life is like a sprint, but actually life is like a marathon. So it's a big picture. It's not just this life. It goes beyond this life. Krishna tells Arjuna that you are thinking that you are shooting arrows and you will be killing Bhishma. But Bhishma is a soul. And he is now in an aging body and he has lived virtuously. So he will be elevated to a better body. So expand your vision. So to be able to see Krishna's plan, see, when we study philosophy, some people may say that, why do I need all this philosophy? I just like to chant, I just like to hear katha, I like to do kirtan, I like to feel bhav. It's good to feel that bhav, if you feel it, if you feel that emotion. But the problem is that life's experiences will often give us many other emotions. Because when we face adversities in life, when we come to kirtan, we will feel some bhav. But when we go out of kirtan, we'll have abhav of bhav. All that emotion will go away. So at that time, it is our understanding of philosophy that can give us some perspective. So first is the length of our existence. Then the second is the depth. I'll come back to the breadth at last. Depth means what? That our existence is not just our body. There is our body, there is our mind, and there is our soul. Sometimes what may be painful for our body may actually be beneficial for our soul. Just like when we fast on Ekadashis or some other sacred days. It's not very pleasant, but it is purifying. So our existence is multi-level. And that's why if somebody is looking only from the physical perspective, then they may feel, what is the point of it all? What is the use of this? I am practicing bhakti and still, sometimes you may say materialistic people are so wealthy and spiritual people don't have so much wealth. But no. You can be wealthy, there can be people who can have a lot of wealth and people can be comfortably unhappy. Is it they can have a lot of comforts but they can still be unhappy? Because they have a lot of physical sensations and physical titillations. But somebody who is devoted to the Lord, their heart will be enriched with bhakti. And if, at the physical level, we are nourished, we feel that we get pleasure through things. And things are important for us. But at the inner level, what matters to us is our thoughts. So actually we may have the best things for around us. But our happiness depends not so much on the things outside us as the thoughts inside us. So bhakti and our spirituality, it enriches the thoughts inside us. So when we understand the depth of our being, yes, things may be maybe at a social level, maybe I don't have as much respect as I thought I would have had. Maybe I don't have as much money in my bank. Maybe my health and fitness are not all that good. But internally, if our heart is turned toward the Lord, even through it all, we will be peaceful. We will even be joyful. So that is the depth of our being. The last part is where the breadth. By breadth I mean that the path ahead. We often think that there is one path ahead for us. And if this path doesn't work, then everything is over. But Krishna's vision of what we can do in the future. Life's path is much bigger. It's like we are going along one lane and we think this is the only lane I have to go according. But life's expressway has many lanes. And we see when Srila Prabhupada was in India, he was trying to share Krishna Bhakti in India. It was not working. And Prabhupada decided to come to America. Now, at that time, there had been a few other spiritual leaders before Prabhupada who had come to America. But they had all been quite young and they had influential followers. Prabhupada had no one. Prabhupada came to America. And even when he came to America, he came to New York. And first he was more with the elite crowd of New York who were interested in yoga. But then Prabhupada came to the Lower East Side. He had no idea about the counterculture at that time, but he saw these people were interested and he went there. If you look from a material perspective, if you see Srila Prabhupada on one side and his early Western disciples on the other side, there is practically no material similarity. That by age, there's a huge difference. They're not just a generation gap, probably 2 or 3 generations gap. They were like that age of his grandfather. Okay? He was at the age of the grandfather for them. And it was not just the age gap. It was the counterculture had that idea that don't trust anyone above 30. Their idea was that 30 is the biological boundary beyond which you lose your intelligence. You are a radical, you are a revolutionary, you are a free thinker till you come to 30. After that, you just lose your intelligence. So, no, Prabhupada was not 30, Prabhupada was not 60, Prabhupada was 70. So, age, then if you look at culture, Prabhupada was a person who had never even drunk tea or coffee throughout his life. He had lived a very pure life. So, nobody had to tell him to follow the regulative principle, that was just a part of his culture. Now, his followers, and their practically only regulative principle was to break all regulative principles. That's just the way they lived. Now, even from an education perspective, Prabhupada was deeply learned in Shastra. Prabhupada's English was also what he had learned in the 1920s. His disciples were in the 1960s, they had learned in the 1950s. So, both from a material and from various perspectives, Prabhupada spoke the same English, but they had extreme difficulty in understanding his English. From the perspective of religion, Prabhupada was telling them about the idea of a God which they had never heard of. One of Prabhupada's disciples, he tells about how he was a professor in the college, and he said, while teaching English literature, he would bring in something like some Krishna consciousness. Some of the students complained to the principal. And he said that, his principal called, I heard you are talking about God in your classes. I said, is there any rule that we can't talk about God? He said, no, but you're talking about a strange conception of God. He says, what is your conception of God? He said, I have no conception of God. If you have no conception of God, then how can you say that my God is strange? He says, no, but you're talking about a God who is black. Now that is all this racial division was there, the civil rights movement was going on. So, you're talking about a God who is black. Before that he said, you're talking about a God who is a cowboy? No, he's a cowherd boy. So there is. A Texan cowboy, that stereotype was there. So, cowherd boy, okay. He says, you're talking about a God who is black? He said, no, the God is blue. So, just God culturally psyched out and intellectually short-circuited. Just couldn't figure out anything. So what Prabhupada was speaking was so utterly strange. And yet there was, those were the audience who were the most ripe for his message. And they took it up and they spread all over the world. So from a material perspective, these were the unlikeliest of candidates for receiving spirituality. But they received it. So the point I'm making is that Krishna's vision of the path ahead for us is much broader than our vision. I think, okay, if this doesn't work out, my life is over. Everything is over. Well, no, life is much bigger. Krishna's vision is much broader. So even if one thing doesn't work out, another thing can work out. That thing doesn't work out, something other else can work out. So Krishna will never abandon us. And that is the basis of our faith in Krishna. That the Lord is always working in our lives. What happens is we are here. This is our present. And this is our vision of the future. So from our present, this is the human plan. We look at the present and we plan the future. But God's vision is the opposite. God looks at the future and plans the present. So that's why sometimes the human plan and the divine plan may be very different. We look at the present and plan the future. God looks at the future and plans the present. So if we just hold on. So this, what Krishna talks about is, if we just have that faith, we have that faith. Krishna, we talked about Shraddha, and then we have a Seva Bhav, and then Krishna will give us that perspective, that Chakshu, that Buddhi. Krishna says, I will give you Buddhi Yoga, the intelligence by which you can come to me, the Buddhi by which you can do yoga. So for all of us, if you just maintain Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, Krishna, you are my Lord, you must have some plan for me. I am your servant, I want to serve you. Please guide me how I can serve you. If we have that attitude, as Krishna promises in 10.10 in the Bhagavad Gita, then I will show you the way. I will not only show you the way, I will lead you along the way, Krishna says. And what Srila Prabhupada did, what Krishna did in Prabhupada's life, what we see in Sugriva's life, what we see in the lives of so many characters throughout our scripture, that truth holds true in our life also. And it is by studying the scriptures we get that confidence that Krishna's plan is working in my life even now. And that's how we become Gyattvama Shanti Vrichyati. We can become peaceful wherever we are, and we can continue in our life's journey from our place at present. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. We firstly started by discussing Sugriva's story and how, in one sense, what he learned in adversity, that later enabled him to tap an opportunity for serving the Lord. So it is not that literally the adversity transformed into opportunity, but rather the adversity helped him to learn something which helped him in an opportunity in the future. So what happened to him was quite unjust, and it was quite frustrating. He could just easily have found the Pampa Sarovar point right in the beginning. He would not have to run all over the universe. So he could have said that all that I went through was just a waste. All that searching and running and fleeing, but he did not. He learned what he could, and then that was for a purpose. So pain is something which is going to come to everyone's life. So we can see that pain can be transmitted, or it can be, does anyone remember? Transformed. And we transform the pain by a purpose. So now how do we have a purpose? That was where we discussed three things. The purpose that we can play, that comes through three things. First was just understanding that Krishna has a plan. So if we have Shraddha, that Krishna's plan is always working in our life. And then we have a part in Krishna's plan. That is our seva. That I will, no matter what happens, no matter what goes wrong or what I do wrong, I am still a part of Krishna, and I still have a part in Krishna's plan. So therefore, we continue on. And the last part was perspective. So perspective can be called as broadly buddhi or chakshu. So this buddhi, we cannot know exactly how Krishna's plan is working, but the buddhi we can get some indication of this by considering the length. Okay, what seems bad now may work out to be much better, good for me in the future. Then we can look at the breadth. What seems bad for me at one level, at a physical level or financial level, this appears to be bad. At a social level, it appears to be bad. But we have at some other level, it's helping me to grow. Our existence is multi-level. Sometimes, say when we are betrayed by someone in a relationship, now that's what helps us to maybe grow internally. When we find shelter within ourselves, then in future when we are in relationships, we are not so needy and dependent on others. Who knows how it works? So our existence is multi-level, the breadth. And the last is?
So it was death and then breath.
Good point.
Yeah.
This mistake was Krishna's plan? Not necessarily. So depth, and then our existence multi-level. Breadth means that the paths ahead can be many. So it's not just one lane, it's an whole expressway. So Krishna can have many different ways in which he can take us ahead. So by understanding this, we can all move forward with confidence that Krishna is there with us. Krishna will not only show us the way, but Krishna will lead us along the way. So, show and lead us on the way. With this confidence, we look at how Srila Prabhupada's path worked out in the unlikeliest of ways for him. His original disciples were the unlikeliest candidates, but they did extraordinarily. That was how Krishna's plan works in inconceivable ways. So we start with planning. So we can say hold. He said hold our plan lightly. Hold our Lord tightly. If you forget anything else, just remember this one point. Hold our plan lightly. Hold our Lord tightly. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
So we should start planning like our life in a way, whether it's financially or even about our life, career. Just start thinking.
No, I didn't say that. I said planning indicates a sign of our seriousness. I was saying that we should not plan in a mode of controllership. We should not think that I am the controller and I am going to bend the world to my will. No, Krishna, I want to serve you and I want to use everything that I have in your service. So my buddhi, my intelligence, which can be used for various things, including for planning, which can also be used in your service. But if our plan becomes more important than Krishna, that is where the problem comes from. A plan is a means to Krishna. Sometimes what happens is Krishna is the means to the plan. That because of it. Krishna, you have to help me fulfill this plan. No, this plan is meant to take us toward Krishna. So it's not that we should give a plan, not at all.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I think the breath part, like lane and expressway, if you could just give 2 more.
The breadth, okay. What I meant is that for us in our life, like I started by saying we have a particular vision of how we will move ahead in our life. And sometimes that vision just doesn't work out. But, okay, this way my life is not moving forward, this way my life is not moving forward, this way my life is not moving forward. But does that mean my life will never move forward? Maybe in some other way. So the ways for moving forward are many. Sometimes we may seek a career in a particular area. Or we try to become friends with a particular person. We're trying and that's just not working. But then, it may be that particular friendship doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that no particular friendship or no particular thing is going to work in our life. So, I have written a book on reincarnation. So once I was asked this question that a boy asked me this question. I have a relationship with this girl, but our parents, Indian boy, our parents are not agreeing. So we tried everything, but it's not working. So I want to know, what can I do? By which in my next life I can have a relationship with her. So now, from his point of view, it's a very serious question. But the point is that, yes, we all have a need for relationships. And we may feel strongly attracted toward one person. And sometimes things work out, sometimes things don't work out. But that doesn't mean that just because one relationship doesn't work out, doesn't mean our whole life nothing will ever work out in our life. Ultimately, it is not just that person we are loving and that person is loving us. It is Krishna who is the source of all love. And Krishna can reveal His love to us through many pathways, or many agents, many instruments. So, with respect to career, with respect to relationship, even with respect to talents. Sometimes somebody may say, okay, I want to pursue a particular career, and that just doesn't work out. But that doesn't mean that nothing will work out. So in that sense, there are multiple lanes on the expressway of life.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for your class. It was very wonderful. The analogy you explained today is like we all can relate in our life how exactly Krishna is there in everyone's life. So I have a question here, like as you are mentioning that Krishna has a plan for everything, whatever happened in our life. So sometimes we devotees, may commit some offenses, or we just wantedly, or like with our laziness or whatever, like we sometimes not follow some things what we need to be as a devotee, like maybe we don't read scriptures every day, or we don't follow the things what we need to do, right? So do you think that we consider as a Krishna's plan and wait for us to show the path by Krishna, or how can one discriminate that our own faults and making ourselves relax, like or
Okay, it's a good
how
question.
exactly one can discriminate that?
Thank you, good question. See, there's a difference between saying everything is Krishna's plan versus everything is within Krishna's plan. Tasyanuvihito Rajan, Bhishma Pitama says to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and it's interesting, Prabhupada translate that as everything is within the Lord's plan. See, what that means is, if you consider a school. Now, in a school, there is an ideal trajectory. The trajectory is that, okay, from one grade you move to the next grade. Now, if some student doesn't move from one grade to another grade, say the student doesn't get the required number of marks, doesn't clear the required number of subjects, there is a plan for such students also. Okay, you give this exam again. If there are 2 subjects you couldn't clear, you do this year again. So now, there is a plan for those students also. But that is not the ideal plan of the school. So the ideal plan of the school is you just move with the flow, and every year you keep moving ahead. So now if students don't study, they are not immediately expelled from the school. But there are consequences for actions. So similarly for us, there are certain things which we are not able to do. And now when we do something which we know we shouldn't be doing, so does that throw us out of Krishna's plan? Certainly not. But are our mistakes or our misdeeds, so mistakes are more unintentional, misdeeds are more intentional, we know what we are doing to some extent. Are they Krishna's plan? Certainly not. The whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita at one level is to help us to choose wisely. It is that, that's why Krishna says, do this and do this. There are 2 different choices, 2 different consequences. So even if our so basically what it means is, mistakes or misdeeds, these will not throw us out of Krishna's plan. It's like, say, so this is the broad expressway, and say I'm here. Now, if I'm doing that, if I have a seva bhav, we talk about Shraddha seva, all that, we can move forward, straight moving along this way. But from here, we could move this way, we could move this way, we could just go in the opposite direction completely. Now, in one sense, all of this, you could say, this whole thing is within Krishna's plan. Is it visible color? Okay. All of this is within Krishna's plan. But in another sense, you could say, Krishna's plan is that we all move in this particular direction. So we will never go out of Krishna's plan, means that within that expressway, within that broad framework, again from a school somebody might just finally get expelled. but we will never be expelled from the, you could say, the universe is a university, and we are always there in that university. But if we take wrong turns, then every choice will have its consequence. Going back to the GPS example also, if we take a wrong turn, we'll be rerouted and be taken to the right destination. But every wrong turn means more time, maybe more trouble, more delays. So there are consequences for actions. So for us, we definitely have to try to choose wisely. Now, so let's look at this a little bit more now. So when we make a wrong choice, so at the most negative level, it could be because of defiance. We think we know better than God. So this is where we just then there could be irresponsibility. We're just not taking things seriously. Now, on the more positive side, it could be because of inability. We just can't do it. So now, if we are unable to do something, does that mean that God wants us to do something we can't do? Well, it just means that what we can't do right now, we might be able to do in the future. So it might be an incremental approach. So if it is wrong choices because of inability, then gradually learn from it. Learn and grow. So then it's not really exactly a wrong choice, but it is just that was too big a leap for us. We gradually move forward. So we have to honestly evaluate for ourselves what is when we are not able to do something. So is it, let's put it this way. So when we say inability, I can't do something. So is that an explanation that I can't do this, or is that an excuse? We all have to decide it, and for that we require honesty. Some of you may notice that I need crutches for walking. So when I was 1, I got polio, and my mother took me to various doctors and did various therapies to try to help me become better. I have some mobility now. So she told me that all doctors would say, to do some exercise, this, that, and sometimes I would say, it's too painful, I can't walk, I can't move around. So my mother told me, how much pain you are in, I don't know that. So if you say that the pain is unbearable, I'm not going to force you. But he said that if you don't do the exercise, it is that you won't be able to walk in the future. So it is you have to be honest with yourself about what your capacity is. So for all of us, we have to decide. When I'm not able to do something, is it an excuse for not doing it, or is it an explanation? And it's not that every time it's an excuse, and nor is that every time it's an explanation. We don't have to be too harsh on ourselves also. Sometimes some things may just be within our particular physical situation, psychological situation, familial situation, professional situation. Some things might be just not possible for us. So Krishna doesn't want us to stretch ourselves so much right now that we collapse for the rest of our life. So we have to sustainably practice bhakti also. So rather than thinking simply in the terms of, I can't do this, I can't do this, we can think more in terms of a relationship with Krishna. That I have a relationship with Krishna, and in that relationship, what all can I do right now? Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any last question before we stop?
One devotee, I think, online.
You have a question?
Yeah.
We can take your question first.
Hello, everybody. This is a very eye-opening lecture. So I have a question. You beautifully explained what to do when there's pain, the 2 pathways that can happen, and if there's a purpose, using the 3 P's. And previously you had described when there's anger, you can either go cold or calm. So do you have an example of how to change anger? In the same way you described how pain can be Like,
Okay.
you can use Krishna conscious in a way to deflect that. Is
Yeah.
there same way? Do you have a way for anger?
Okay, so do I have a way? Well, there's no like one magic way, but I'll talk about the principle. I'd say that generally when there is anger, there is a need to restrain ourselves initially. Maybe the other person is very angry with us, say. Then we try to reason with them, we try to talk with them, we try to explain. They just get even angry with us. But sometimes it's best to just go away from that place. Before either of us does something, we go beyond a boundary which neither of us will be able to cross back again. Go away from that place. That's fair enough. But it is a little tricky to know when that distance is constructive and when that distance starts becoming destructive. It's like, say, if I fracture my hand, then it's important that initially my hand be put, say, in a sling or a cast so that I don't move my hand. Now that is vital for recovery. But, and during that time the doctor will say, don't move your hand. The sling is there, but even with the sling, don't move your hand. But after that, it's equally vital that the sling or the cast be removed, and then I start moving my hand. Now moving may be difficult, and at times I have to be a little I have to keep testing myself. How much can I move? How much weight can I lift? But that movement is also required. And if the cast is kept for too long, then the hand can start atrophying. And then the very process that was meant to help the hand recover can cause the hand to decay, in fact. So like that, in recovery there are two distinct phases and both of them are opposite. Like one is inactivity, almost enforced inactivity. And the second is, again you could say almost forced activity. You may not feel, it's too difficult to move. No, you have to move it. So same way, when there is anger, then it's good to initially have some distance from that person. But after some time, especially that relationship is important and there are a lot of stakes involved in that relationship, then it's best to try to make some effort to mend the bridges. Now of course sometimes the other person may just not be responsive, and then we really can't do much about it. Sometimes things just go down a particular trajectory. So then in Sugriva's case, he tried, but Vali was just not reconciling. But just understanding that distance alone always is not the guarantee. We also need to make some efforts. Okay? Thank you. So thank you very much. Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanand. Thank you so much. So